Welcome back to The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Calistro Farrier. Never a dull moment with the Grenada Football Association. In the last elections for a new executive, the race was even more exciting and intense than the U.S. primaries. Cheney Joseph up against Marlon Glean. That Cheney Joseph is no longer the president. However, he continues to have concern with the running of the Grenada Football Association, particularly when it comes to its finances. The issue of the finances of the Grenada Football Association have always been in contention. There have always been questions and whispers about what is happening. Now Joseph is saying that the new executive, despite fighting very hard to get control of the Grenada Football Association, they are not spending the money where it needs to be spent. He's contending that women's football is being woefully neglected in terms of the amount of money, and he's charging that directors on the GFA are getting huge sums that surpass what is being allocated for things like grassroots football and women's football, which really needs funding for the future of the game in Grenada. He's also concerned about how the Premier League clubs are being treated in terms of financing. He's joining me on The Narrative now ahead of the meeting that is going to be held on Saturday in St. George's to approve the GFA's budget, a total of 10 clubs and a number of other associates and affiliates of the GFA, 22 representatives in all, going to that meeting to approve the budget. Cheney, welcome to the program.
Morning, and thanks for the invitation to be part of your program.
Well, the last time you were here, it was ahead of the elections for a new executive. That is now history. A new team is running the GFA, but you have a lot of concerns. In fact, you wrote a blog about the concerns that you have, with a lot of information about the allocation of funds. And one of the things you talked about was that the budget is being passed without, you believe the budget is being passed without the clubs having seen and the representatives having seen what it is that they are going to be voting on Saturday. Explain that to me.
All right. First of all, let me repeat again, thanks for the opportunity to be on your program. Secondly, I want to make it clear from the start, the General Council on June 11, 2022, voted for a new executive, a new president, and therefore we must respect the wishes of the clubs. However, I will admit to you, I went into oblivion and I opted to stay quiet or, if ever, promote where possible the positives of the football. But in recent times, it would seem that the General Council has been weakened because most of the vocal persons in the General Council are now at the helm, and then others, such as myself, have not been very active with any clubs. In fact, we're not, in most cases, participating in the General Council now. But with the increase in number of calls and messages and information being shared with me, I thought to myself, maybe it's either one of fear or lack of confidence on those who were providing those kind of responses. And I thought, why not champion their cause? Because there's no sanction that these guys can give me at this point in time, simply because I am not directly involved in the General Council or in the GFA. Now, basically what I was saying is that we have 10 Premier League clubs who are a percentage of the General Council, and then there are 4 conferences, each with 3 delegates who make up the composition of the General Council. With that being said, one would have expected that each of the conferences would have had meetings since the submission of the documents, which should have been, I think, 5 weeks before the meeting, and discuss each and every matter relating to the finances, because that's a very important area. And then come out with areas to be discussed, or concerns or questions to be asked. I can tell you for a fact that a majority of these conferences, and when I say majority, it's only 4 conferences, I can tell you plain out, a majority of these conferences have not met. There is the possibility that the conference may have the Northwestern Conference may have met to discuss some areas, but from my own inquiry, the others haven't. And therefore, it would be an exercise in futility that you are going to discuss a very important business such as finance, and you who are representing the different conferences have not engaged the stakeholders such as the clubs. So, for example, St. George is not, I mean, sorry, the Central Conference comprises of teams like Fontenoy, Happy Hill, not Happy Hill, sorry, Fontenoy, Hampshire, and the rest of them. No such meeting has taken place. The Southern Conference includes those clubs like Police and Honved and Carenage and them. No such meeting. The Eastern Conference with teams like Mount Horn and St. David's FC and those kinds of people. I am told that no such meeting has taken place. Instead,
And,
what you may find happening,
have you been
if
able
I
to
can just
find out
quickly,
why they have not met? Continue and also tell me if you've been able to find out why
yeah,
they have not met.
yeah, well, let's put it in simple terms. Football has gotten very political, and as you said in your opening remark, the GFA, and in fact, football in the Caribbean, it seems, is very political now, and politics in both ways. And as a result of that, those in the position of authority now in these conferences, they operate by decree. So, for example, I can tell you plain out, there are elections due for all of the conferences for election, and it's a year plus overdue, and no such elections has taken place at the conference level. So let's put it this way: we assume one day it will fix. And hopefully later on in the conversation with you, we will speak to the whole idea about why conferences and why not instead let all 39 clubs that are affiliated, or sorry, 37 now, affiliated to the GFA have a right to attend meeting, each of them making their own independent decision instead of some people doing it on their behalf. We'll have
Now,
such a conversation.
now you wrote that $360,000 was budgeted for women's football, and in the last budget, and that no money had been spent.
And I am saying that to you not as speculation. Luckily for me, I happen to see the statement of income and expenditure that was provided to the clubs. Um, and therefore, the information that I wrote was as a result of information which was shared and not the opinions of myself or anyone else. So I will tell you, for example, they had proposed that they would spend that money for women's football. And the absolute truth is not one dime was spent according to their own documents. So it's not a case where I am giving you my views on the matter. It is what they are presenting to the General Council. And if persons who love women's football will not express concern over that kind of scenario, then I will be a little bit disappointed, to say the least.
In no expenditure, does that mean also that there have not been any domestic competitions in female football in Grenada in the last year?
The absolute truth is, and I hope my good friend Kazira Thomas does not take it personal because it's not about her. The reality is that the only thing GFA has done with women's football, truthfully, they had about two or three what we call kind of festival type things. And outside of that, they had about three or four fancy posters stating that women's football will be started. I think they did a seven-a-side once, and maybe they did not remember that because they have not put it down as an expense under the 2023 women's program. But they have put out four different or three or four different dates for the starting of a women's league, which has not started and never started. We are so lucky that our women are playing, or the senior women are playing undefeated in the Nations League. And that is as a result of our prior investment in the game and with women's football.
And the skill of the skills of the players.
naturally the commitment of the players and those coaches involved.
So you have also talked about a confidentiality clause that they've had to sign. Was this something that was also a requirement under your leadership as well? That you can't talk about what
Let me
happens
answer
in
you this
GFA
way.
stays in GFA?
Well, let me answer you this way. I would not pretend at one point in time, very early in the game, I tried it because I know in some institutions they do it. And when I was uh, in on committees in those external bodies, I remember having to sign off on that. However, it was not part of the GFA's policy, and I tried it, and the very same persons who are now at the helm objected to it. Now, I understand that they have now sworn an oath to secrecy within the executive that they shall not divulge information to the general public nor to the football constituents, which I find is very unfortunate because the truth is these clubs are the one who voted them in thinking they were going to do better. But now they're saying to themselves, let's not uh, divulge information. Let's sign an oath of secrecy. And each of them signed off on this confidentiality clause, which I find is laughable.
And that's the executive council.
Yeah, the executive. It's kind
Now,
of unfortunate.
you wrote something that is very disturbing to me. It has to do with equal pay. I know there was a conversation some time ago that women should not get less than men. Um, I'm not sure if it was implemented. You'll let me know if it was. But you're talking about the proposal. Well, you say proposed here, so it apparently did not happen. But what is happening with that? Tell me about that. Are women really getting paid less to kick the ball than the men? That
Well,
is disturbing.
it's the harsh reality, and I'm not sure if I should say less. I'm not sure if they're getting. The reality is
What do you
that
mean you're not sure if they're getting?
well, I can only give you the information from those who have engaged me personally. The women's football team, the senior women's national team, should be given the very same match fees as the men. They should be paid equally for every time they represent Grenada at the national level. That amount back when I was the president, you have to understand, I have not been the president for almost 19 months. But when I was the president, we signed off at an executive level that every single game going forward, each game that the women play, they shall receive the same match fee as the men. And I can tell you that is not the case.
So the information you have is that they're being paid less or they're just not even being paid at all?
The information I have is that they have not been paid the same amount.
And how much is it a fixed, the match fee is a fixed amount or does it depend on where you go and play and how you performed?
Well, right. So when you play at home, there is that possibility that you may have the advantage of having gate receipts. When you play abroad, you don't have such control. So when I was the president, when the team played at home, they were getting, well, they moved, sorry, from 150 US dollars, I mean, sorry, 150 EC dollars to 150 US dollars per match. And when they went abroad, they were being paid 100 US because we were explaining to them, look, you have other charges. I mean, we have other charges associated with your travel. Now, that amount we understood to be possible simply on the basis of us properly budgeting for the amount of games we assume each of those teams will play at home and abroad in a given year. Now, I can tell you, I mean, I don't want to divulge sources, but I can tell you plain now that that is not the case at present.
And salaries for employees of GFA as well as the directors' remuneration, you also taking issue with that because you wrote about that. A 50% increase for the staff. I mean, a 50% might seem a lot, but it depends on what it was before. And
Well, I can tell you plain out from my own experience as the president for 12 years, the GFA employees were well paid. That's the first thing I can tell you. They were well paid. However, they are even better paid those who have recently been employed. I hear of persons getting $10,000 even though they have been reassigned roles. I hear of persons getting increase. That was prior to the additional heads that have been included in the secretariat. In fact, if you ask me right now, I understand they have things like storeroom manager. They have an additional set of staff involved in women's football, but yet for all, no money was physically played. They have a women's desk. They have a projects officer, yet for all, I don't see any projects being implemented at the expense of a program that was well intended to support clubs, and that is the club development program. The club development program for at least 4 or 5 years was basically taking a percentage of the budget even before you start the year and allocate it to each single affiliate in the GFA. So the Premier League clubs were all getting $25,000, and the rest of the clubs who are not in the Premier League were getting $10,000. And what they had to do was to put together their budget for the year using up that money. In addition to that, I will tell you the GFA is lucky because in my short stint at the Olympic Committee, that money from the Olympic Committee was also increased. So the GFA got additional revenue. Now, where I think the issue is one, I heard of, you know, additional employment of persons not necessarily aimed at developing the sport and at the peril of
what
those
about
clubs.
coaches? What about coaches and technical staff? Because I've always heard concern about that we need coaches, we need technical staff, the technical aspects of the game, we need to work harder on that. The budget document that's going to be approved tomorrow that you have been able to see, the financials of the GFA that you have been able to see, does it show any increase there in technical development?
Yes, there is an increased allocation there, but I don't know if it is an increase per head count or if it is an increase in the individuals already engaged getting a little bit more. But I give them credit there. There is, I think, about $30,000 or $40,000 more being spent on the technical staffs, even though there is less games being considered. For example, under the women's football national teams, there's no allocation for this budget for under 20 girls, under 15 girls, and under 14 girls, sorry, and under 17 girls. That's the national team. Now, even if they don't have competitions within that time, one would have thought that they would have kept those national teams training and allow for international friendlies. Even if it is one or two, they send the girls off to just Trinidad and let them play 3 games, you know, as part of preparation for when the next year when CFU or CONCACAF may have competitions for them. But pretty much from what I saw in that document, there's absolutely no allocation for this year for these national programs. Right. And also, what is a little baffling too is that you have a women's team that is doing very well and is promoted to League B. Yet, for all the allocation for your women's program is suffering. In fact, what I would have thought is all of that money
It
that
seems it seems also, Cheney, that based on the information you have, that they're cutting the budget for 2024 for women's football.
well, you are absolutely correct by about 40%. Now, I personally would have said to myself that the fact that you spent zero on domestic football the prior year, but you budgeted for it, and the fact that you are showing the affiliates that you are having a surplus, because you are having a surplus, right? It means then that you did not spend money that was allocated in the prior year. So I would have thought that they would take that money, add it to anything they plan in this year, and make the allowance for women's football a larger sum and find ways and means to keep all national teams in progress, in training, as well as to implement the domestic leagues that they are considering. Now, granted, I will give them a little bit. I think I see somewhere there they had budgeted 140,000 to receive from government, and they're showing they received none. I see they had budgeted for additional something 450,000 in sponsorship, and they received none. That's their document. So maybe they're saying, well, we didn't get these money, so we don't want to spend. But like I can say to you, I can't believe that the GFA has been almost bankrupt in 2022 May, according to the current president.
Well, I was about to ask you that your directorship of the organization is being charged with not such a good financial performance, that when they came in, that GFA didn't have any money.
Calistro, even me here can say anything to you, and yet for all, we can then do the due diligence and prove otherwise. Now, if what the gentleman was saying was accurate, why then did the financials at the end of December 2022 show an operating income of a positive one? If it was almost bankrupt.
How much was it? Do you remember?
From his numbers, I think it was almost 3 million. So how did that miracle take place from June the 12th to December 31st? And mind you, I will tell you that the election was June the 11th. FIFA normally gives 2 disbursements, one in January and one in July. He was not truthful when he refused to tell the clubs and all of the general public that a second disbursement was due in July for the GFA. And we were not in any kind of financial stress, really. It was a case of having to balance the budget. Besides that, I want to just bring this point out. When I was the president, under the FIFA contract of agreed objectives, which is under the FIFA Forward 2.0, we left inside at FIFA over 2.6 million US dollars, which was deliberately left there because we were in pursuit of a technical center. So in simple terms, either the gentleman is the best accountant around, or he simply lied to get into office. Whatever is the situation with regards to what he said, his financials at the end of December of the election year does not reflect the almost bankrupt association that he spoke of.
But he came in June, July. He came in the summer.
Correct.
You got a disbursement in July from FIFA. From international. So it is possible that he is not lying, Cheney, and that
no. But
what we're looking at in the December statement is because of that disbursement. So
then simply the financials as of January, the P&L as of January to June 30th should have shown a negative, and they produced that to the General Counsel, and it has no such indication.
So the financial statement does not bear out the claims that the current president made about the financial state of GFA at the time that he
Or we may have to simply say our people in finance either misrepresented the financial situation when they showed that as of January to June, there was no such a situation.
That's all the time we have for this segment. I want to thank you so much for joining me on The Narrative. I look forward to having you back. And of course, to our viewers, we are going to attempt to get the current management of GFA here on The Narrative to speak to us about what's really going on with that organization. I have a few questions about the equal pay for women in women's football as well. Cheney, thank you so much for being on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This is The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Calistro Farrier. When we come back, I'm being joined by the Tourism Minister of Guyana to talk about how the Essequibo dispute between Venezuela and Guyana is impacting tourism, if it is at all, and what measures they might be taking to deal with that problem. On December 3, Venezuelans are being asked to vote in a referendum. The clauses 3 and 5, or the headaches for Guyana, they're seeking to disregard in line 3 the authority of the International Court of Justice, and in 5, they're seeking to get Venezuelans to agree to annex Guyana. When we come back, I'll speak to the tourism minister about the situation.